This completely changes how we view the Edmonton Oilers as we have a huge new report from the Edmonton Journal surrounding the future of one of the star defensemen on the Edmonton Oilers in Mattias Ekholm. And we also have a big update on a prospect that is not so great for Oilers fans. We got to break down this prospect update, the new update about Mattias Ekholm and how the Oilers could be exploring an option that could be very, very risky for them. All of that coming up on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But hey, before we get into the video, we are so close to 20,000 subscribers. If you guys are enjoying the daily content about all your favorite teams, hit the free button down below. But today, Mark, is centered around the Oilers, and let's start with this young prospect. Now, look, this is very interesting because the Edmonton Oilers were working on signing one of their nice young Russian D-men, Niktita Yevseyev, to a contract, to an entry-level contract to bring him over. But Jason Gregor comes in and says, I'm hearing this will not happen this offseason. Now, to be fair, Yevseyev, well, he does have that nice little snipe there. There's been a bit of, not concern about his development, but he's stagnated a little bit. With the Oilers right now, there is a future need for some defense, that's for sure, right? There's no doubt about that. But Yevseyev, he's been splitting time between the VHL, which is like the KHL's equivalent of the AHL, and the KHL. So, Mark, he's been playing as a 6'7" D-man in the KHL. He's been playing a bit in the VHL. I think the Oilers are going to try and bring him over at some point, but what do you make of this not happening this offseason? Do you think it's maybe more just to say, hey, it's okay, spend another year in Russia, but this dude still needs a contract, even in Russia? There's some concern as to whether he'll even be playing in the near future.
I think the big thing looking at this, the Edmonton Oilers do need to add on defense over the next couple of seasons, but I can't see him jumping into the lineup right now, making an impact. No. So I don't think there's too much of a rush. Obviously, you want him still playing hockey, if that's in the VHL, the KHL, the AHL, the ECHL. There's so many HLs, but the thing is, getting him ice time, I think he's going to get more in the Russian league somewhere. So if he stays over there for another season, if the Oilers don't get it done until next season or next offseason, I'm not too worried about it. But if you're going into next year without a contract signed, then you're starting to worry that maybe we'll never see him on North American ice.
Yeah, and look, let's just be honest. The odds that Niktita Yevseyev turns into a very solid piece of the Oilers decor, I'm not pulling any punches here. It's probably not going to happen. Let's just be honest with ourselves. A former 6th-round pick, you're lucky if this guy ever even plays in the NHL. But, there has been some promising stuff. But again, at the end of the day here, he was not playing a ton. Though, again, near the end of the season, he was playing 10 minutes a night in the KHL. And that's not that bad. And again, with the Oilers, there's probably going to be other options out there, but after this coming season, there's a big hole on the left side of the defense behind Darnell Nurse, and we're going to talk a bit about Ekholm in just a minute and the other implications of this. But yeah, I'd like to see Yevseyev get some time. I'd like to see something happen with him, but hey, if nothing happens, that's it. But leave your thoughts on Yevseyev if you have him down below, because you always want to see prospects come over. But look, if he just spends another year in Russia, spends his time there, maybe the Oilers can try and bring him over eventually. They clearly see enough in him to bring him in on an ELC. We'd love to see it. But Mark, let's get into the bigger news today, and let's talk about Mattias Ekholm, because from David Stables of the Edmonton Journal, he said, quote, "It wouldn't surprise me if the Oilers extended Mattias Ekholm, maybe even this summer," because as we know, Mattias Ekholm is one of a few defensemen on the Edmonton Oilers who need a contract extension, or it will be expiring after the 25-26 season. And Ekholm, of course, a guy Oilers fans love him, right? I mean, this guy came in and they're one of their best analytical pairings, I think the best, when he was with Evan Bouchard. Yes, he came into the playoffs. He probably didn't really heal properly from his injury. You have reports from people who saw him around after the playoffs saying he was laboring. But Mark, the big problem with Ekholm is that, yeah, he still has this season. He's 35. He'll be 36 at the time of any kind of contract extension. There were only 8 defensemen in the entire NHL over the age of 35 this past year, and most of them weren't producing that well. Does it concern you at all, the idea of extending Mattias Ekholm? I mean, I know you want to have that guy who works well with Bouchard and have some kind of depth after Darnell Nurse, again, after this coming season, because right now you have a lot of good lefty, but I feel like an extension could be very, very risky in this case.
And before we get into how much he's projected to get, when looking into it, like you alluded to, one of the best pairings in the NHL with Ekholm and Bouchard playing under 1,000 minutes, but very close to it. The best when it comes to expected goals for, and that is probably a lot to do with Bouchard, but one of the best defensive, and of course Ekholm being by far and away the best defensive defenseman on this team. He joined the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs, almost a point per game, 6 points in 7 games. I think it says that. But the big thing is signing him at the age of 35 or farther into his age 35. You're starting to leave some question marks, and it kind of gets into they're going to have to make a lot of decisions on this defense. I mean, right now, Wallman, they got from the San Jose Sharks, is going to need a contract after this season as well. Kulak, you can work your way down. Josh, listen, the big thing is I think Ekholm is a huge part of this Oilers team. I don't think he's going to accept any shorter than a 2, 3, 4-year deal at this point because it's going to be his last one. It's going to be a high risk, but I almost feel like if the Oilers want to compete, unless they have someone in mind they can replace him with, they're almost kind of handcuffed to giving him a contract.
That's the tough thing, right? Because this guy, again, like when he's with Bouchard, magic happens. And Ekholm can be a very, very impactful player, but it is just straight up the age. Like, will he decline like some other guys? Very few defensemen at age 35 are still producing the way that he has produced at this point. And if we bring up the contract projection from Scotiastat, like they have him, again, with a lot of comparables at people around that same age. They're Chris Letang, Alec Martinez, Jeff Petrie. Those are actually 3 of the guys that were over 35 this year, right? And they signed for like 6.25, 5.25, and with the cap going up, the projection for Mattias Ekholm is a 3-year, $7.6 million deal. And again, with the looming Connor McDavid extension and a lot of money being allocated to different places. And again, this season, you're fine. You're almost 2 deep on the left side with Nurse, with Ekholm, with Wallman, with Kulak. And like, you know, you got some other guys down there who can play the left side as well. Mark, I wonder, right? Like, you definitely have a plan. You have some guys that you could bring up. I mean, look, there's always moves you can make, trades you can make, move around some prospects, call someone up, this kind of stuff if you need it in a pinch. I'm not necessarily worried long term. It's not what I'm getting at, but I am worried in the sense that, like, how do you replace your top left-hand defense? Maybe he doesn't do as well this year, but to me, this is like a bit of a concerning thing because one of your most impactful guys is aging. Do you extend him and hope that he continues producing at the age he is with a guy like Evan Bouchard? And even then, do you try and get him for less money? Because like Mark, we've seen a little bit, these defensemen who are a little bit past their prime are getting banged from teams that just need to pay them something to mentor their young guys. And who knows? I know Ekholm, we'd love to see him stay in Edmonton, but it wouldn't shock me if something like that could be on the horizon if Edmonton doesn't want to pay him the money that he'd probably get on the open market.
And I think that's the biggest thing. You're looking at a guy that has a lot of wear and tear on his body. I mean, going through his entire NHL career, we can see starting in 2011, playing with the Nashville Predators, going to the Edmonton Oilers. That's a lot of games on your belt, blocking shots, being physical, going deep in playoff runs. So this adds up to a very big wear and tear. I mean, we've seen with the Montreal Canadiens, Dennis Savard had to retire after the season due to all the banging that we've seen happen through his career. So it is very questionable where, I know, I understand what I said, but we're seeing this team that, listen, you have Bouchard signed. There is some flaws to his game, the defensive end. We haven't seen Darnell Nurse live up to this contract. If you're comfortable with letting a guy like Ekholm walk, you're banking on 2 of these guys excelling even farther in their career. And we know what the Edmonton Oilers want to do, win a Stanley Cup like every other team. But we've already seen them go 0-2 in the finals in their past 2 years. If Ekholm walks, I don't know if this is a team that could make it that deep without a player like this.
Well, here's the thing. I'll give it another option, right? And a trade, because I think that's the big thing that we were thinking about Ekholm. Like, and yeah, maybe there was the looming thought of an extension, but a trade seems to make the most sense, especially if he continues to produce it the way he is alongside a Bouchard. Teams would probably be willing to pay a lot for Mattias Ekholm because you know the numbers are going to be there if he's playing with a guy like Evan Bouchard, who's going to be a point per game player, right? So, you know, I think if Ekholm has a good year, I think that's when you almost have to ship him out. It's tough because if he's playing well, you're like, dang, maybe we do keep him because he's great. Or do we trade him for a haul at the trade deadline? And again, you have a guy like Wallman who he played pretty solid when he was there, right? He put up pretty good numbers. Maybe he'll be a trade candidate as well. You can't trade all your lefty, but I'm sure there'd be some team, maybe another contending team that'd be willing to take Ekholm's contract, and you can maybe get something that'll help you out in the future to maybe then flip to another move. There's things you can do if you're Edmonton. It's not like it's extend him or let him walk. There is the trade possibility, but regardless, big decisions will have to be made, and we want to hear your thoughts on all this down below. What do you make of this Ekholm situation? Should he be extended, traded? We'd love to hear from you, but that'll do it for the this episode of Hat Trick HQ. If you enjoyed, hit that free subscribe button. We're so close to 20K. If just a fraction of you watching these videos click that button, we'd be there in no time. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh Gosse with my co-host Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.